Welcome back, everyone. So today we are going to be installing and configuring SQL 2022 on a Windows Server 2025 box. Now, before we get started, just so everyone's tracking, we have this computer joined to the domain already. We are using a domain admin account called SQL Administrator, which is a part of the domain. And then also it has an IP address, and we're just going to make sure that we can ping, which I always like to test layer 1 first, connectivity. So let's make sure that we can communicate with our domain controller, because we're going to need to have this integrate with Active Directory. So I'm going to go ahead and ping 172.16.0.2 is my domain controller, and I should get a reply. There we go. So we can talk to our domain controller, which is essential for this stage. Alright, so let's go ahead and minimize, and I've already downloaded basically SQL 2022 from the internet. You can get these trials from Microsoft so you can test them. One of the cool things I like about Microsoft, honestly, is that you can literally try their software first before you potentially buy it and put it into production. I'll put a link in the bottom where you can find these. So let's go ahead and get started. We want to run SQL 2022 and open it up. This is more like a package deal that you'll get. So it's a whole package that it comes with, and that's the file version that we're working with today. Okay. So this is how you get started. Once you run it, it's going to run through the evaluation phase. Just so you know, I do have 2 NIC cards built onto this machine. One is for the internal network, and the next one accesses the internet on the outside. And at the bottom, I can show you what that looks like. So this is for the internet, and then this is for internal, for all the systems on the lab. Okay. So here we are. We have multiple versions of what we can choose from. We can download the server setup and then install them later in the machine if we choose to, or we can do the basic setup, right? Or we can go through and do the custom. Today we're going to do the custom, and right here it shows you the location. You can install this on the C drive. My C drive is set up where I have a 80 gig. But I do believe I did apply a secondary drive. So let's go ahead and find that real quick. So let's go to disk management and initialize a disk. So I want to type in disk management again, and I'm going to do create. This is going to bring up disk management. I think I do have a secondary drive over here that needs to be initialized. There you go. So I'm going to go ahead and allocate this disk, and I'm just going to create a new simple drive. I'm going to use all the space, and then we're just going to call this my A drive, which is fine, and that's where I'm going to put it. It's going to be basically my data drive. And finish. And over here, once we are finished, you should see the A drive shows up. So instead of installing anything on the C drive, we're going to put everything on our A drive. Okay. Best practice is always to keep your installation separate. So let's go ahead and just move this to A. And then we're going to go ahead and do the install. And as you can see over here, you should see the files being created as we move along. So it's going to go ahead and download all the installation files that we need, and then we can start working on the install. Alright, so our package is almost done installing. This is the final stage of just verifying the integrity of the file, and then from here we will go into the next phase of the installation. Now you should see this once the installation has downloaded this package. Now the installation center will pop up just as this, and you should go ahead and go to installation, and you can do a variety of things here for your installation. So we're going to go ahead and launch a new SQL Server in a non-clustered environment. If you do build out like a cluster later, then you can build failover clusters and so forth later with your SQL. For us, you can also go through the planning phase, and it will show you all the hardware requirements that you need, as so forth. But for us, we're just going to go ahead and start with the new installation and run through the process. Okay, for here we're just testing this out. So the free edition is fine. It gives you basically 180 days to test out the product, almost 6 months basically. So I think it's fair enough. And this is just for a lab environment. So we're going to go ahead and click next. Accept the agreement. Make sure you read everything here line by line all the way to the bottom, and then you click next. It's going to go ahead and check your prereqs, and this is where it's going to run. Enable Microsoft Update, and then it was going to scan for anything that's needed before we get started. Now, during the installation, one thing I like about this process is that it actually checks for you to see if you have all green before you can continue. And I got 4 greens, but I just got a firewall warning. And if you click it, it will tell you that basically Windows Firewall is enabled, and you need to open up certain ports to enable remote access for your for your SQL Server to function, or to be functional with the rest of services. So if you click this link, it will take you to Microsoft right here, and it will talk about what ports that need to be open for your firewall. And you need to configure the Windows Firewall to allow SQL Server access. So if you scroll down, you will see that there's actually a PowerShell commands that you can run that will also do the work for you. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this right here, and I have my PowerShell instance already open. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste this over here, and as you can see, it's basically just setting firewall rules, which I like to do. In most of my videos, you'll see that I actually, instead of turning off the firewalls, I create the rules that will allow these things to happen. So we're just going to go ahead and run this script to create these local firewalls right here. And the rules basically were successful. They have been created. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and do a rerun on this to make sure that now the firewalls, that rules that we created, are working. So let's try to do a rerun again. Most of the time, if this doesn't work, you may have to close this and go back and start all over again. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this out. I'm going to do a GP update. And then let's go ahead and rerun the installation. Okay, no updates were found for the server, so we go ahead and click next. And then now we're going to do the setup files. So I did run these, and I think it took everything said was true. Right here, I did allow these to run. So this is basically opening up the ports. So let's take a look at these additional steps as well, just to make sure that all the firewalls are good to go. Two 2832 is command prompt. Say when you rerun the actual operation, it's just a warning, just telling you that it is enabled. So make sure that you configure the ports as needed. So we're gonna go ahead and click next and move on to the next stage. And we're not doing anything with Azure right now, so it won't be working with the cloud or anything like that. This is all gonna be on-prem and local. So we're gonna click next. And then for the database features here, so this is where you have the option to select a lot of stuff. One good thing though that is missing is reporting services, and as you can see now, it's something you have to download from the web. It's not a part of the package anymore. It used to be with SQL, but now it's completely separate. So for here, we can select almost everything. I just want to select basically all of these features, and we're going to change the root of all of these to A. And once that is good to go, we're going to go ahead and click next. While that is thinking, you can see server reporting services here, and to download it, we'll have to download it from the Microsoft Download Center. So we'll go ahead and get this working in the queue as well while we configure the box. So the default instance is fine. I will tell you though, from a security standpoint, you never want to keep the default instance of your server, because everyone knows it is my SQL server. So you can always change this instance if you choose, so you can use the default. But I always recommend changing it to something that only you know, right? So when you install the directory, that is going to actually be the name of your SQL instance. But this is a lab environment. Like I said, we're just doing testing, first sandbox, and just building out the lab. So we'll keep the default, and we're going to go ahead and click next. This is running. Let's see if we can find it. Here it is, English. I'm going to go ahead and download the reporting services as well while this is moving. Okay, so this is just talking about poly-based services. If you are going to be using this later, we'll just click the default and accept. Go next here. Okay, so now here is where we will have to plug in a few things. If you have a service account, right, there are a few things that you should make sure you do here. So you can add the password right here for these. So I'm going to go ahead and do the agent. I want the agent to be automatic, right? And everything else should be okay so far. And we're going to click next. And earlier about the password is coming up in another step. So here, this is where we're going to do, we can do mixed mode or you can do Windows authentication mode. So when you do mixed mode, you can do Server SQL and both Windows, or you can just do one mode by itself. We're going to do mixed modes, and I'm going to go ahead and enter our password here. And we want to add a current user right here, and then we're going to also add as well administrator and check the box, and we're going to also add our main administrator here as well to it. On these tabs here, you can go through and you will see the directory where the SQL will be installed, and then these are just other tabs that you can actually look at and configure as well. For the memory though, SQL will use up a lot of your memory, as you can see. So you can go to recommended right here and set it. So the minimum server memory I want is 8192. So I'm going to do 8192 will be the minimum, and then the max I'll just do 16384. So that's 16 gigs max that I'll give it a range to play with. If you don't set this normally, what it is, it just basically use a range between whatever you have to like your max memory, it will use that range. And with SQL, it will use your memory if you don't configure it right. And then file stream, if you want to take a look, you can enable file stream here as well if you choose to. I need to make sure that the minimum server memory is greater than 84%. Okay, so it's telling me that I need to make sure that I accept the minimum. So right here, this is basically telling me that the minimum is greater than 85% of the memory that I have. And that's just because the VM that I am using, I need to make sure that I update the memory on this box. So I can go with 4096 for the minimum here, and then accept it. So the default recommended, I can go right there, and then I can accept that. And then I'll just need to make sure that I fix this on the back end. And that's just basically updating the memory on the VM itself. Add administrator here. No more for the data directories. For this, everything will be the same. So just accept the default, and then you can go ahead and click next. This is a port number that the master node uses to communicate when it's working with other nodes. By default, you can leave all of this the same, and then just go ahead and click next. this is basically another port that you will see for integration purposes when you're doing a scale out configuration. Don't really have to mess with any of this, so just go ahead and click next and accept. Alright, this is just basically telling you all the features that you have, and it's ready to be installed, right? So if you ever wanted to find the configuration file, it's being saved here, and then just click next to install. And here the installation will start itself. It's going to run through, and then once it's complete, we should have our box up and running. I'll pause here until we're complete. So the setup successfully completed. As you can see, you want to get all green check marks as such. And now you can just go ahead and click close. Reporting services now should have been also downloaded, so we can go ahead and install the reporting services. And then once that is running as well, we also have the management piece to also install as well. So let's do the reporting services first, and then we can get into the next phase. So once this is up, just go ahead and click install. Same thing, we're going to do evaluation for 180 and click next. It's so funny that SQL reporting services is now so separate, and then it's like you have to pay for this piece as well. That's crazy. It's a license just for the reporting services. Now everything is just becoming software as a service. As you guys can see, they're breaking up their individual pieces of the software when they're selling it, and I guess that's just how the companies make more money. So I'm going to cancel this just because I didn't clarify where we were trying to install this just now. I want to make sure it's not on the C drive. So accept all terms, next. Next, right there. So we need to change this location. We don't want this to be on the C drive. This needs to be on the A drive. And then we're going to click install. So keep everything separate from the install. And we're going to let this run through. And then once we're done, we're just going to jump into setting up the SMS piece, which will be this piece here coming shortly. Alright, so the reporting services has been done, and we can go ahead and click configure the reporting services. It's just going to bring up the reporting service configuration center right here, so that you can configure the connection and so forth and connect. But we need to first, because we won't be able to connect to the server as yet, because I don't think the server name is correct here. This is not accurate. So let me check system setup real quick. I'm pretty sure that this name for this system has been changed. Oh snap, it have not been changed, so it is actually pulling that up. Okay, so we will need to fine-tune the connections later, so I'll cancel this, and we'll have to do some changes later before we can do that. Let's go ahead and do the install for the SQL Server Management Studio. Same thing, it's also now a separate piece of the bill, so you want to go ahead and install that as well. Alright, so the SQL Management Studio has been completed, so I'm just going to go ahead and close that down, and I think we are good to go for everything here. We have the reporting services. We did install basically the management server tools as well. So I think this is a little bit separate, I believe, from the build. But for the main part, we do have everything that we need for our SQL build. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do a restart, and then we'll come back and configure the rest of this. So once your system has restarted, you want to go ahead and just start up the SQL Server Management Studio that looks like this. Let me make this a little bit bigger. And this is what you'll be working with. So you can go ahead now and you can connect based on the authentication method that you choose. And you should be able to, oopsie, what happened? Connection was successful to the server. Okay, so it's saying that my certificate was not trusted. Okay, so maybe we need to trust the certificate and try to log in again. There we go. Seems like it's taking it. And this will be the first look here at your SQL server. So as you can see, it's for databases right here. You have all the default databases. Security, you'll find your logins, security roles and credentials as usual. And not much has changed with SQL overall. If you're used to SQL or SQL, whichever one you call it, similar setup to the previous. They just keep adding more stuff to it and separating certain things, like the agent is separated, the server management studio is now different, and then also now for the reporting server as well, it's like a different part about it. But this sums it up though for basically connecting, installing, and getting your SQL server up and running for a 2022 module. So I was able to connect to this box right here. Seems like it's coming in, and this is the report server configuration manager piece that you'll be using to do reports and so forth later on for your box. Right, so you have the ability to set this up however you want it and get things started. Back into the studio here, we can create databases and so forth. We're going to be using this SQL server as we go along because we have a few things that we're going to build out, and we're going to connect it here to actually our SQL server. So this sums it up, guys. Thank you so much for watching for the installation piece. We're going to do another video to configure, like creating databases and so forth, just getting your hands dirty inside of SQL if you've never really played with it. But just to keep this video under 30 minutes, we're going to close out here. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, we appreciate you. Until next time, catch you later.